What's up everybody, I hope you're doing well. Today, in this video I'm going to talk about a very important question in music mixing, which is EQ or compression. Which one should you put in first when you mix a music? Well, as you probably expect, one way is not better than the other, so it really depends on many different parameters, but at the end of this video, you will be able to know how to proceed exactly when it comes to choosing which type of processing to put in first in your chain. The first thing to understand and to keep in mind when you work on a certain source, whether it's vocals, guitars, or anything, it doesn't really matter, is that a compressor will always react to the whole frequency spectrum of the input source, unless you use a sidechain that would cut the low frequencies or that you use a multiband compressor, but it's not the question here. That means that if you hit a compressor with an unbalanced source with, let's say, a big excess in the low range, which is a typical situation, well, there is a big chance that the compressor will not work properly. Anyway, all these explanations to highlight the fact that when you use a compressor, when you mix some music, you gotta first make sure that the source that hits the compressor is even frequency-wise. Because if you don't even out the source before you compress it, your compressor will not work properly. Knowing all that, you might say, okay, I've got my answer, EQ must come first, end of this video, thank you, bye-bye. Well, not really, because there is something very annoying when you choose to put your EQ before the compression stage. The problem with putting EQ before compression is that you lose a lot in precision. Let's take a simple situation. You want to mix vocals on a beat, and you start by doing some subtractive EQ to clean the vocals with precision and cut all the potential flows and excess. You finish this step, and then you want to use compression to control the dynamics. But the problem by doing this, I mean, it's not really a problem, but you gotta be conscious of it, is that as soon as you start compressing, you also start to squash your equalization. So to illustrate the situation in a simple way, if your EQ looked like this before the compression stage, now with the compressor, it looks like this. In other words, in terms of frequency, you come back to something rawer and less precise. And it's exactly what's the big advantage of putting your compressor in first, because by proceeding this way, you kind of prioritize the precision. When you choose to put compression first in your chain, in an ideal situation, you first control the dynamics and give more energy to the audio with the compressor, and then you can easily clean the frequency spectrum with an EQ and get something super clean, robust, and punchy only after 2 stages of processing, which is a real luxury. But that's only the theory. As I said at the beginning of this video, if you choose to use compression first, you have a big risk of over-compressing certain frequencies and under-compressing others. So to make a long story short, there is an advantage and a disadvantage for each. If you use EQ first, you hit the compressor with an even audio source, so the compressor will work correctly on the whole frequency spectrum, but frequency-wise, you potentially lose in precision. If you use compression first, you're more likely to keep the precision, but there's a big chance that the compression won't work properly and could damage the natural dynamics of the source. But for every problem, there's a solution. But before I give you the solution, if you've enjoyed this video so far, please make sure you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to watch more content like this one in the future. So the solution will simply be to add a bit of frequency cleaning right before the compression. But it's not a classic cleanup. The only goal of this step is to attack the compressor with a relatively balanced signal. So honestly, for this stage, there is no need to go into great detail and play with very narrow bands to find the teeniest little flows. No, here you need to look at the big picture and spot where are the frequency zones that create an imbalance in the frequency spectrum. For this step, I recommend using a frequency analyzer. You will find one in the very popular Pro Q3, but also in Slade's Infinity EQ, also in less expensive plugins such as Waves REQ6, or in TDR Nova, one of the best free plugins on the market nowadays. By using an analyzer, you can easily spot frequency areas that are too powerful and reduce them to rebalance the frequency spectrum. Whatever the source, it happens very often that this clutter is located at the bottom of the spectrum. If it's something recorded in natural conditions, you're likely to have a rumble in the low range and sort of boominess in the bass and low mid-range. That's why I usually end up with this kind of correction at this stage. I also often use the Pultec HLF3C to get a cool analog correction. Does it really make a difference compared to a digital high-pass filter? I'm not sure about that, but I love to use the Pultec EQs and it works very well in my mixes, so I keep using them. Anyway, by doing this, look what happens when the signal hits the compressor. So above the compression without the cleanup, and below the compression with a cleanup in the low range. The difference is clearly non-negligible. The compressor below is way smoother than the one above because it works on something more balanced at the inputs. In this case, the compression will be way more effective and cleaner, and now I can really focus on my EQ that comes right after and get more focused on potential little flows and little details. That's how I generally proceed when it comes to EQ and compress something, whether it's vocals, guitars, or other instruments. And that's what a lot of pro engineers do as well. Now, it's important to mention that it doesn't always work like this. Like, you don't have to do the cleanup stage if you think that the source you're working on sounds clean and balanced. For example, when I work on something that was really well recorded, I directly go to the compression stage because it don't require any cleaning. In some situation, you might also have an EQ and then a compressor to prioritize the energy that the compression gives to the source and not the precision. Whatever the situation, you need to listen first and analyze what's going on in each frequency band. And honestly, if you need the help of a visual analyzer, go for it. That was it for this topic. Before you leave, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel to watch more videos like this one. See ya. Bye bye.